The day I got a job offer, Cindy, my cousin's wife, announced she was pregnant. She gave me to move out or pay $10,000 a month for living expenses. But what she didn't know is that the house we're living in now is mine, and the money we use also comes from me. The day I received my offer letter, Uncle Mark made a huge feast. Even Jason, my cousin, who was usually too busy with work, rushed home before dinner. After a few rounds of drinks, Cindy, who had been quietly eating, suddenly spoke. "I'm pregnant." The room went silent for a few seconds before it burst into laughter and excitement. Jason's face turned red with joy as he stared at Cindy's belly. "Really, Cindy? Why didn't you tell me?" Cindy smiled shyly. "I wanted to surprise you." No one was happier than Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda. Jason and Cindy had been married for 3 years without having any children. I was genuinely happy for Cindy, and thought to myself, I'll definitely give my future niece or nephew a big gift. As the joyful atmosphere grew, Cindy suddenly put down her chopsticks. "There's one more thing I want to mention," she said. Aunt Linda, her eyes still full of joy, asked, "What is it?" "I think Sierra should move out," Cindy said with a cold expression. "She's already found a job, and now that I'm pregnant, it's going to be inconvenient after the baby is born." The room instantly became silent, and Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda's faces grew awkward. Cindy, though usually quiet, had never spoken to me with such a cold tone. I had always thought she was nice, so I responded kindly, "There shouldn't be any inconvenience, and when the baby arrives, I can even help take care of it. When the baby comes, there won't be enough room for everyone." "How could that be?" I said, trying to be considerate. "We can clean up the attic floor, and make room for your little family. There will be more than enough space." Cindy shot me an inexplicable glare. Aunt Linda chimed in to reassure her. "Cindy, don't worry. We'll make sure neither you nor the baby is uncomfortable." Cindy wasn't finished. "When I have the baby, I'll be recovering and won't be able to move around or dress properly. It's just not right to have an outsider in the house." Suddenly, her expression softened again. "Sierra, I'm not trying to force you out, but you've been living here for so many years. Isn't it time you moved on?" Seeing my face darken, Cindy added, "Your parents passed away early. When you were in college and grad school, my in-laws covered all your living expenses. Nowadays, young women are all about independence. It's time you learned some self-respect and started living on your own." Uncle Mark, who had been silent for a long time, finally slammed his hand on the table, yelling at Cindy, "That's enough. You're getting out of line. Jason, take your wife back to your room." Jason quickly stepped in to defend her. "Dad, Cindy's pregnant. Why are you yelling at her? Besides, she's not wrong." Uncle Mark lost it. He slammed his glass down and shouted at Jason, "Then you can get out too. Cindy wasn't wrong. 7 years ago, my parents were in a car accident and both became comatose. That year, I was about to take my college entrance exams, juggling between school and the hospital, and I started thinking about hiring a nurse. When Uncle Mark found out, he came to me and said, 'Sierra, you don't need to hire a nurse. Aunt Linda and I can take care of them.' Uncle Mark had always been kind to me, but taking care of one person in a coma was already hard, let alone two. 'It's no trouble,' he said, tears welling in his eyes. 'They're my sister and brother-in-law, after all. No one will care for them better than family.' After thinking it over, I agreed and paid Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda triple the normal rate to take care of my parents. They did a great job. Every time I visited, there was no smell or mess on them. They looked after my parents for over a year before both passed away. The tension in the room was palpable, and everyone had their eyes on me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. After living in that house for so many years and helping the family, hearing Cindy, who barely knew the whole story, treat me like an outsider in my own home was too much. My chest tightened, and with each word she spat, I held back from exploding, but I had reached my limit. Cindy, still with a harsh expression, continued with more venom in her voice. "I'm just saying what's obvious. Sierra, you've been living here for way too long. It's time you learned to live on your own. I know you may be comfortable here, but..." She hesitated for a second, giving Jason a superior glance. "The truth is this house isn't yours, and since I'm the one having a baby, we should be the priority." Jason, who had been standing by her side, tried to soften the blow but failed miserably. "Sierra, you know this isn't personal, but Cindy's pregnant and well, things are changing." I stared at the two of them, my gaze fixed, feeling my patience completely vanish. It was time to lay everything out in the open, not out of pride, but out of necessity. I had stayed quiet for too long, and that had only allowed people to think they could walk all over me. With a voice steadier than I expected, I began. "Cindy, Jason, I'm sorry, but you're both mistaken about a few things here." The room felt even more silent. Uncle Mark, who was still red with anger, watched me intently. Aunt Linda, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation, sat with her hands folded, unsure of what to say. All eyes were on me. I took another deep breath, and continued. "The truth is, whether you know it or not, this house is mine." Cindy, with an expression of disdain, raised an eyebrow. "Yes, you heard me right, Cindy. I bought this house with the money I received after my parents passed. I paid Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda to take care of them while they were in comas, and after they passed away, all the money, including the money used for the upkeep of this house, came from me." The shock in the room was immediate. Jason looked confused as if he had been hit with an unexpected blow, while Cindy's face transformed from smug superiority to a mix of rage and humiliation. She went pale for a moment, her lips trembling, but quickly shifted her expression to something even colder, her eyes burning with pure hatred. "What?" Jason stammered, clearly at a loss. "But Dad, this can't be true, right?" Uncle Mark looked at him, his eyes filled with frustration and shame. He hesitated before nodding slowly in confirmation. Cindy, still in shock, tried to gather herself, but it was clear she was furious. She opened her mouth a few times as if trying to come up with a retort, but no words came. I had completely disarmed her. Finally, she muttered, almost under her breath. "So, you're saying this house is yours?" I nodded calmly. "Yes, the house is mine. And the money we've been using to cover expenses here also comes from me." That uncomfortable silence returned, gripping the room. Cindy stared at me with a mix of resentment and contempt. Jason looked completely lost, unsure of where to look or what to say. The night, which had started with celebration, now ended with unbearable tension. Cindy, visibly trying to hold on to what remained of her dignity, stood up from the table without another word, turned, and marched upstairs, her face twisted with anger. Jason followed after her, still in a daze. I knew this wasn't the end of it. The next morning, I woke up early, still exhausted from the argument the night before. I was determined to move forward and focus on my work. I got dressed, had a quick coffee, and left the house without saying a word to anyone. The tension from last night still hung in the air, and I figured it was better to let things cool off before any more discussions took place. I spent the entire day at the office, but something nagged at the back of my mind. I knew Cindy wasn't the type to let things go easily. When I finally returned home that afternoon, tired from the day, the first thing I noticed was the eerie silence around the house. It was unusual. Normally there would be some sort of movement, especially now with Cindy pregnant, but there wasn't a sound. When I tried to open the front door, it didn't budge. My heart skipped a beat. I tried again, but nothing. I walked around the house to try the back door, but it was locked too. That's when I realized something was very wrong. Suddenly Cindy appeared at the upstairs window, her face twisted into an expression of pure fury. "You're not taking this house from me," she screamed before disappearing back inside. My heart sank. I knew exactly what she had done. She had changed the locks while I was gone. It was clear Cindy had decided to fight for what she believed was hers, even if her claim was built on a lie. She wasn't going to accept that the house was mine. With a bitter smile, I looked up at the house, feeling adrenaline pulse through my veins. Cindy could try to kick me out all she wanted, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I knew exactly what to do. I pulled out my phone and made a quick call to my lawyer. "Hi, it's Sierra. I need you to get the paperwork ready. Looks like we're going to have to settle this the hard way." The silence on the other end of the line was unsettling. My lawyer still hadn't responded to the voice message I sent, and I was growing more frustrated by the minute. This situation had spiraled out of control, and I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Cindy was trying to force me out of my own home, and I wasn't about to let that happen. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to escalate. I picked up my phone again, but this time, I dialed the police. Calmly, I explained the situation. How Cindy had changed the locks on my house without permission, and refused to let me in. "Do you have proof of ownership, ma'am?" The officer on the other end asked. "Yes, I have all the documents. The house is in my name," I replied, already pulling up a scanned copy of the deed from my email, ready to show it to them when they arrived. About 30 minutes later, a police car pulled up to the house. 2 officers, both middle-aged men, stepped out and approached me. "Good afternoon, ma'am. We received your call. Can you explain what's going on here?" I laid out the situation from the argument the night before to Cindy changing the locks without my consent. They listened intently, and one officer asked to see the proof of ownership. I handed him the documents, and he made a few notes before turning to his partner. "Let's talk to her," the other officer said. They walked up to the front door and knocked. A few seconds later, Cindy appeared, her face still flushed with anger. Her expression changed when she saw the police, going from surprise to irritation. She knew things were getting serious. "What's going on?" she asked, feigning innocence. One of the officers calmly explained the situation, making it clear that the house was legally mine, and that she had no right to change the locks or prevent me from entering. Cindy, as defiant as ever, tried to argue. "This is ridiculous. I'm pregnant. I have a baby on the way, and she's trying to throw me out? I'm not leaving. This house will be ours soon anyway." The officer shook his head unfazed. "Ma'am, we're not here to argue about the future. What matters is the legal ownership right now. This house isn't yours, and you changed the locks without permission. That's considered trespassing." Cindy's composure cracked. "I'm not leaving," she shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "This house should be mine, and you can't force me out." The other officer, who had been quiet until now, spoke up firmly. "You have 2 options, ma'am. Either you leave the house now, or you'll be arrested for trespassing. It's your choice." Cindy's face went pale. She looked at me, her eyes burning with hatred. But she knew she had lost. Her defiance crumbled, and after a few tense moments, she let out a furious scream. "You'll regret this," she yelled, her voice full of venom. "I'm leaving, but this isn't over." She stormed upstairs, and I could hear her angrily packing her things. Jason, still at work, wasn't there to witness the scene, but I knew he'd be livid when he found out. Still, I didn't care. Cindy had crossed the line. A few minutes later, she came stomping down the stairs, a suitcase in hand, her face twisted in rage. She stormed past the officers without looking at me, but before she left, she turned and shot me one final look of pure malice. Without another word, she walked out the door. I stood my ground, refusing to let her words get to me. I knew I had done the right thing. After the police left, I stood in the living room, finally feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Cindy was gone and she wouldn't be coming back. In the weeks that followed, Jason tried to reach out multiple times, but my decision was made. Cindy was never setting foot in my house again. Even when their baby was born, I held firm. Cindy had shown her true colors, and there was no way I was going to let her back into my life or my home. Eventually, Jason and Cindy gave up. They found another place to live, and I moved on with my life in peace. From that day forward, my home was truly mine again, and I never let Cindy cross that threshold ever again. Do you think I did the right thing?